Okay, sorry, this is a late explanation of the new contract. I honestly just assumed at first that it was still kind of self-explanatory, but we have already had some issues with understanding it properly in general. So we're going to go over 12 and then that last page where we're used to putting commissions and just go from there. So paragraph 12, the way it is, obviously settlement and other expenses. Number one outlines seller's expenses. Number two outlines buyer's expenses. Notice respectively where obviously the seller is responsible for their brokerage fees that the seller has agreed to pay. Where did they agree to pay? Any and all broker's fees was obviously in the listing agreement. And obviously, respectively, a buyer at the bottom there, brokerage fees that a buyer has agreed to pay. And number two, that would obviously come from a buyer's rep. So filling this out, if you go A1B, the following amount to be applied to brokerage fees that buyer has agreed to pay. So you would, if you put 3% there, that money is coming directly from the seller. Hopefully you all realize before the change in August, basically all commission was paid via broker to broker. With a cooperating broker, you have a listing agreement for 6%, and they're willing to pay 3% to us, or vice versa, to whoever brings the buyer, and then the other 3% go into the listing side. So that is what it says. Obviously, if you scroll down here to that final page, pursuant to a previous separate agreement, the listing agreement, listing broker has agreed to pay other broker a fee of 3% or a nominal amount. So the biggest interchange here is who's paying and who's paying how much. That was the whole issue in general of the NAR settlement. So as far as who's paying in 12, if you are asking a seller to pay you or Brick and Loft directly, it's going to go in 12. If it's still broker to broker, it's going to be that last page. If, as a buyer's agent, you don't necessarily know what they have in their listing agreement, obviously, so you can ask, or, as far as assuming goes, if you put it on that last page and left 12 blank, and they told you that the seller is not offering a broker's compensation, meaning they don't have it in a listing agreement, then you could say okay and put it under 12 that you are asking them to pay you directly. So without knowing, I think it would be safer to assume cooperating brokerage is paying, so broker to broker, and just using that last page. If it is ultimately, if you have it under both 12B and you put it again on the last page, you're asking for 3% from the other broker, and you're also asking the seller to pay you 3%, which obviously, unless you have a buyer's rep for 6, it's just probably not going to happen. But as far as using it correctly, you will more than, there are circumstances where you could have it under both if they're only offering 1.5% and you're still asking for the other 1.5%. Just not going to be as often that you're going to run into that. And so if you're asking for 3%, it's going to be one or the other. It's not going to be in both places. So that is what you need to know here for filling out settlement and other expenses. If you think about who's paying you, it makes sense. It's either coming directly from the seller or it is still broker to broker. I've seen a lot of confusion there already with our agents and other agents. So just keep that in mind going forward. If you have questions, obviously holler.